President Putin says that he supports a full and fair investigation. And I appreciate those words, but they have to be supported by actions.
Indecision reigns. President Obama is trying to be deliberative. It comes off as indecisive. He's trying to be thoughtful. It comes off as weakness.
So for me, I think that the West, including the United States, has to have a far more significant response than we've seen to date.
What is the latest with the situation in the downed airliner? We've just received word that Malaysia Airlines has confirmed that the black boxes have been turned over from Russian separatists and through Ukraine, and bodies are on the move out of that area. We're back with the panel. Charles.
Obama made a speech today about Ukraine. He seems to think this is a matter of forensics and moral suasion. He says Putin ought to do this. He must do this. He must allow an investigation. He must ratchet down the rebels. I mean, this is a man who believes, does he actually think that's going to make any difference? You know, he said 3 years ago, Assad has to go. Well, he's not exactly gone. He said at a speech at the National Defense University a year ago, the war on terror must end. Well, ISIS, the al-Nusra Front, the Taliban and al-Qaeda haven't exactly signed up. And now he says all of this must happen with Russia. Of course it's not going to happen unless America leads. That kind of speech you make if you're the leader of Belgium. You don't if you make it the leader of the one country who can make things happen. And the reason he doesn't actually do anything is he believes that Russia is being punished on its own. He says it will only increase the isolation of Russia. Isolation of Russia, a week ago, Putin was in South America, our backyard. He was in Cuba, in Nicaragua, Argentina, and Brazil, received with open arms all kinds of agreements. And then in Brazil, he was at a meeting of the BRIC, meaning the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, to establish a rival to the IMF. If this is isolation, I would quote the Secretary of State, it's a hell of an isolation.
Juan.
Well, we're talking about the Western powers isolating Russia, and I think there's progress being made there. The key element is the phone calls that took place over the weekend among the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, who I think are now at the point where they are ready to do something. That's the key here. Remember how much the U.S. only thinks it's 4% of our trade is involved with Russia. The majority of Russian trade is with the Europeans. That's where you can isolate and punish and break their economy. The additional sanctions that were put in place last week affecting the banking system, isolating Russia in terms of their ability to transfer currency, will have real impact on a lot of those plutocrats who are the basis of Putin's power in Russia. That's how you punish him, and that's why this is very real. I was taken by Senator Graham saying that, indecision reigns, but it seems to me there has been a consistent pattern of seeking to punish Putin.
Steve.
There hasn't been a consistent pattern of seeking to punish Putin, and I think Charles isn't actually cynical enough. I don't think the President of the United States thinks that he is isolated, thinks that Putin's isolated. I think he says that. President Obama says that, but I don't think he believes it because there's virtually nothing in the public record that suggests that that's the case, and the President of the United States has been saying the exact same thing for months. Remember, he was going to be isolated to an intolerable degree after the invasion of Crimea. He's not isolated. He wasn't isolated then. He's not isolated now. I think that's the problem. The challenge for President Obama when he makes a speech like this is not just that he needs to threaten consequences and get serious about threatening consequences. It's that nobody would believe him if he does threaten consequences.
Charles, don't take offense to that not being cynical enough.
No. Let me just say that I refuse to be accused by anyone, particularly you, of being not cynical enough.
I'm a young idealist
I can
here.
out-cynic you any day of the week. If you want a test of what the phone calls are going to amount to, let's see if the French cancel the contract that they have with Russia to supply them with 2 helicopter carriers. That's real. That's not a phone call. That's not rhetoric. Let's see if the Europeans are going to impose real sanctions on sectors that will cripple the Russian economy. The ruble and the market in Moscow are higher now than they were before the crisis in Ukraine. Some sanctions and some effect on isolating and weakening Russia.
Again, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations was forceful. Samantha Power today in the UN Security Council, pretty forceful. If President Putin, if the Russians really weren't involved, he would have said secure that site at all costs. and he didn't.
Look, a UN ambassador can make a forensic argument and can speak for the moral authority of the United States. But if her boss, the president, refuses to act on it, refuses to do anything, and takes a soft line in which he says, I'm waiting for Putin to show that he matches words and actions, it means nothing in terms of real actions in the real world. And that's why nothing has happened.
That's it for the panel, but stay tuned for a hero's tribute.